so tall up here. My name's Theresa. I'm a grateful believer, and I'm a recovering addict and alcoholic, and I'm really glad to be here this evening.
Hi, Theresa.
Hi, and I'm so glad you all are here. And this is totally incidental, but my ear is really plugged. So if I'm not speaking loud enough, let me know, because I'm having a hard time telling how loud I'm talking. That's how plugged my ear is, but I'm not sick. So weird. It's getting better though. So if my voice starts falling, just raise a hand. So at the very beginning of the year, when when we started our group teachings, I talked about Jesus being the foundation of our recovery, and ultimately then of our peace and our being able to live the life that He wants us to live, of abundance. So then in the intervening times that I've talked, I keep trying to just relate back to that, because I think it's just really important that we hang on to that foundational truth. And so tonight I wanted to talk about one of the other things, because I've talked about a few things that kind of get in the way of us standing strongly in that foundational truth. And one of those things is our need to wait. Our need to wait for what we want. And we may even think that it's what God wants. Sometimes we're not sure. But we have an idea of what we want our life to look like. Whether that's restored relationships, stable employment, finances, maybe even I want to be better, I want to be more gracious, more patient. So they're good things. It's not like our want list is always something completely off track, or I just want to win the lottery and go open a bar in the Bahamas. I'm not even, so maybe that's on your want list. I don't know. I'm not judging. But some of the things that get in our way, though, of just sitting here graciously, peacefully, in the comfort and love that God has for us, is our brain that is saying, but when is this going to happen? But when? We read the promises. A promise implies something in the future. When? When is it tomorrow? We can be, because we're human and we have egos and we're impatient. We can't be like 5-year-olds when it comes to, but when? So some of us, and you can kind of ponder that a little bit while I'm talking, like, what is it that you're just really waiting impatiently for right now? For God to reveal to you, for God to give to you, for God to bless you with, for God to change you with. What is it that you are waiting for? And I'm also going to just kind of do a little testimony while I'm at it, because I'm doing this talk because I'm really struggling with waiting. And I'm not going to talk a lot about the problem or the issue. I'm going to talk about me. And I will say that I have an adult child with a life-threatening illness who is really, really suffering and struggling and causing lots of struggle and suffer around her. So I'm waiting, and I'm in recovery, and I'm working the steps, and I'm a believer. So I've surrendered it. I've surrendered this situation to God. I'm good. I'm perfect. I'm just like a Christian, just sitting here waiting on God's will. Nope. Nope. And a lot of us find ourselves in this season of, okay, I've worked the steps, or I turned my life over to Jesus, or I committed to sobriety, I've committed to a life of recovery, I've committed to a life of service to others and to God. And so I know these tools, I know these steps, and yet it's still hard. So I just wanted to talk a little bit tonight about, yeah, it's hard, and what God says to us about how we can wait more graciously. So we all have to wait. So sorry, that's the bad news. I should have started with that. We all have to wait, period, the end. We don't make it faster, we don't control it, we don't fast forward it, we don't make things happen if we are surrendered and working steps 1, 2, and 3 as much as we can, as many times as we can, every day that we can, and surrendering this to God. So we're not making things happen. What we are hopefully approaching is prayerfully and in obedience, we're waiting graciously. So how do we wait graciously? And so I Googled a list, as you know that I would. There's actually a lot of teachings about what we can do to help us wait graciously. So when we are, I'm going to use the word longing. Sometimes it comes to a longing for a situation to move in a certain way. And we are praying and we are surrendering and we are asking God and we are waiting. And yet we are longing. Then we need to be practicing the habit of waiting graciously. We can't give in to this emotion of longing. We can share our longing with God. We can share our longing with others, with fellowship. We can ask for feedback about how to continue to wait graciously while we're longing. So those two things can sit side by side. God does not say you shouldn't mourn, you shouldn't grieve, you shouldn't long, you shouldn't have longing, you shouldn't be sad. In fact, the Bible talks about seasons of these emotions. However, the Bible also brings us back to, but we wait upon the Lord, and our hope is in the Lord. So when the thing that, when we're having that longing, our temptation is to focus on it. And this is also really fodder for the enemy. It's fodder for our character defects, which are kind of our own go-to with our thought patterns, to rear up and to start really causing trouble with, oh, you're never going to get that, pessimism, self-absorption, you should just do whatever you need to do to feel better, those old, I don't know, just those old thought patterns that just have run through our head and that we're working on, that we're asking God to work on, that we're asking God to remove from us, to transform us from. And then it's fodder for the enemy to simply just keep derailing you and keep distracting you from what we need to do to wait graciously. So some things that we can do to wait graciously is to first, remember I talked a while back about refocusing your lens. Yes, we can choose to look at what we're longing for and let our mind be diverted and distracted as much as we want into that imagination of what we're longing for, better job, more money, healing that relationship, Someday my family will all be together. Someday my daughter will be well and she'll be with her son again and we'll all be together. And oh my goodness, I just want to walk over there and have that happen right now. But that's distraction. That's not what's happening right now. And I need to refocus my lens and see the goodness that God has placed on me right now. So let me put my lenses back on, the lenses that God has blessed me with his grace and mercy. And so when we do that, then we're able to practice some habits, and I'm just going to read through 7 of them, and then I'm going to go back and talk a little bit more about each of them. So 1, spend time with God regularly. 2, maintain an attitude of hope. 3, continue serving God. 4, keep living your life. 5, reflect on God's goodness in your life. 6, look for lessons in this from God. And 7, don't take matters into your own hands. I really don't like to have lists that include don'ts, but this is an exception. That's an emergency measure. Don't take matters into your own hands. So let's go back. Spend time regularly with God. And we all are doing that, every day as we establish our recovery habits and routines. We cannot be living a life abundantly if we're not spending time with God. But especially if you're feeling like you are really going through a time that you are having a situation that is pulling your attention towards a longing of, God, why aren't you intervening? If you're finding yourself praying fervently and angrily and desperately, if you're finding yourself impatient and in periods of despair, will this ever happen? And if we're finding ourselves using that word when, in our prayers, in our self-talk, in how we're talking and thinking about a situation, when will this be over? And then we really need to be looking at, what are we doing with our time with God? Are we intentional? Are we just opening Jesus calling and oh good, I don't even have to look the verses up, they're right here. Thank goodness. Okay, that's my Bible reading, done. Speaking as somebody who's gets into that, all right, check that off. But are we saying, okay, I really have to start my day with you. I have to acknowledge your presence. I have to know you are with me. I have to say I am not alone. I am not alone. I am not alone. And breathe that in and acknowledge your presence around me. So rethink your time with God. So when I say that, I mean it should be heartfelt and intentional. When you're having prayer time during this time, and confess your difficulty waiting, confess your longing. I've had a lot of hard talks with God lately. Turns out I'm doing a lot of the talking, which is often the problem. So confess it, ask for strength, because again and again, that's what the Bible tells us about waiting, is to wait with God's strength. God will give us strength, and it has to come from Him. And then stop talking. Breathe. Listen. And listen and feel for comfort. That is what God has for us, to soothe our longing. He knows we're suffering. He sees you. So know that He sees that. Maintain an attitude of hope. I told somebody the other day that I felt like I was waiting for hope. And that's okay. I think that's okay sometimes to wait for hope. However, again, I have to confess that. I have to confess that to God. And when I confess that and when I pray about that, I realize, oh, Some of this is I'm hoping in the wrong thing. So examine what you're hoping, what your hope is in. So there's so many ups and downs with a volatile situation that you're longing for, that you hope for this person to become well, or to make steps towards becoming well. And they take a few steps in that direction, and then they are ill again, and it is a difficult situation again. And then I realize that's not where my hope should be. Our hope has to always stay in the same place. And that's why I was struggling with hope. No matter what happens, does our salvation go away? Does God leave us? Does he stop loving us? Does his grace stop, being available to us? And that's what our hope is. We hope in the Lord. Blessed are those who hope in the Lord. So that's where our hope has to be. So if we can keep, and again, that's a lens. Keep your lens focused on where that hope goes. So we're not hoping anything about this situation. And we get that confused sometimes, or I do. I get that confused. I think my hope is over here, so then I'm disappointed. If my hope stays over here, then it's steady and strong. Continue serving God. I did this talk about waiting a year ago, and somebody came up to me afterwards and said something that I'll never forget, and it was Gerald, actually. He said, don't forget what a waiter does in a restaurant. And I thought that was really funny, because I'd never said that in a talk, and I thought, oh, that's a good point. If you went to a nice restaurant and sat down, and the waiter said, I'm Joe, and I'm going to be your waiter tonight, and then went over and sat down and put his feet up, you'd be like, that's not a very good waiter. Hello, could you come and bring us some dinner, please? If he didn't serve you. That is to wait on God, to wait on others, to wait on God's plan, is to serve, and not to sit around and watch the process, but to actively come in and to say, how can I serve you? And that's what waiting on God is really, the verb of it is doing. Keep living your life. Slow down. Sometimes when we're longing, it's distracting, and so our life tasks are just, I just got to do this. I got to check the box. I got to get through this. Because my brain really wants to be messing with this and fixing it is what my brain really wants to be doing. But if we can slow down and breathe in, then God is at work. Be still and know that I am God. Psalms 46:10 tells us. So keep living your life, but in that pace that is intentional and focused and grateful for today, and sitting in this day where God has placed us with the work before us that God has put before us. So we can focus on that. Reflect on God's goodness in your life. Make a list. And we can call that a gratitude list, but we can also call it a list about God's faithfulness. Many of us here are miracles. God has already showed his faithfulness over and over again. So many of us could make a really long list, like pages and pages and pages, of the miracles of where we said when. And God did a work more abundantly, more miraculously than we thought possible. So if we sit down and make a list and write those out, it makes our brain really remember and absorb and focus on God's faithfulness. If he could do all of this, how can he not be at work? He is at work. we just don't get to see the outcome right this minute. Look for the lessons. So what is God building in you in this? And I keep saying that God is stretching me. God is strengthening me. I'm pretty sure I don't particularly have to like it. Those are some of the talks that I have with God. And I think that's okay as long as I'm obedient to it. And, and how is God focusing you? This could be a time where God is just really shaking some stuff up in you and saying, he's saying, I know you want that. I'm comforting you. I see you that you want that. But as you're waiting graciously, here's some other things to work on. And it can be an amazing work. And these 6 things help us to avoid number 7, which is don't take matters into your own hands. And I can't tell you, probably 2 to 3 times a week, I have my car keys in my hand. I'm ready to go find that child, grab her up, take her to a treatment center, drop her in there. Of course, none of that would do me good, but it would make me feel better. It would make me feel like I had taken matters into my own hands. I'd done something. I hadn't just sat there and watched this happen. But as I reach for those car keys, this is where we get to tell ourselves, stop. Another good example is when you're trying to restore a relationship, or you're having conflict with somebody, or you're wishing that some kind of behavior would change in this relationship, and you want to pick that phone up and you want to call them, or you want to send that text, or you want to push send on that email, or there's so many times where don't take matters into your own hands. Where when you have that impulse, and we all know that feeling because it's been building, because we have been waiting, we've been practicing this, we've been using these tools, but for some reason, because we were tired, we were probably hungry. I get in more trouble when I'm hungry. Causes more trouble. A donut could fix a lot. So we feel that tension, and we're going to act out on that tension, and that's when we stop, breathe, pray, talk to your fellowship, use the skills that we have used that are basic relapse prevention skills, and we ask for God's presence, God's peace, and literally breathe. Stop and breathe. Some nice deep breaths go a long ways in reducing that tension that's in your solar plexus when you're just determined that you're going to do something. The something to do is to open your hands, to confess to God that you're struggling with waiting, breathe in His presence, ask Him for His strength, because His strength is the only way you're going to get through that. And then let Him comfort you with this frustration and difficulty until this tension passes, and it will, because He's amazing, and that's what He does, and He loves us with an everlasting love.